in my hand. We're not talking about national approval ratings. This is not some campaign speech I'm giving you. This right here is hyper-localized. What does your own fan base feel about your head coach? Example, Penn State, James Franklin. I've got him polling at a solid 85% approval rating right now. Now, you know we only go up to 90 because we don't think it's possible to 100% approve of anybody, as long as they're humans, you know. Everyone's got flaws. So James Franklin, I got him at 85. That's extremely high. And I would say the only people who are Penn State fans who do not approve of James Franklin would be the fringe, you know, like ring cult. That's the group that until you win a national championship does not approve of you. That's the group who probably claims James Franklin's overrated, even though he's not. And they claim that Penn State's overrated, even though they're not. It's crazy to hear a Penn State fan saying that. But, you know, you got a fringe minority that will say that. But outside of that, and outside of the people who are tired of not beating Ohio State and Michigan, which is valid, but outside of those folks, and those folks probably are younger and probably don't understand in the grand scheme of things how really good the program has it right now and how lost in the wilderness Penn State football could be, because within the last decade and a half, you had sanctions hit you that should have put you out in the wilderness for a long time, and it didn't because of that guy. And it's a story that I know's been told at the Penn State level, but needs to be told at the national level more. And so because of that, James Franklin, I've got him polling at 85%, and I would consider that a little bit low. On the total flip side of the coin, as we go down to Tallahassee, it brings me no joy to tell you Mike Norvell is polling at 20% approval rating amongst Florida State fans one season after winning the ACC and in their own mind being screwed out of a playoff spot. But it fell off a cliff because Florida State fell off a cliff. And here's the problem. Many Florida State folks will tell you this. As disastrous as last year was, if they had loaded recruiting classes incoming and they had a ton of momentum on the recruiting trail, they would be skeptical, but they'd be ready to buy back in. But Florida State doesn't have that. Talent acquisition has been a problem here. Not killing it at the high school recruiting level, just doing okay at the high school recruiting level has been a big problem. And because of that, it's hard for a fan to look and say, I see stability returning. Maybe it will, but it's not. We're not polling what reality brings us. We're polling how fans feel about the program and about the head coach. And because of that, 20%, look, 20%'s high. You go, what was he, 2-10, I think. You go 2-10 at a major program, most of the time you're fired, no equity. But Mike Norvell had equity because of just one season ago. He did what they did. And so I got him at 20% right now. Obviously, I think this goes without saying, a huge defining year coming up. And I think it's maybe of all the major brands out there, maybe Florida State, the biggest mystery brand, biggest mystery team with a big brand this year. They opened with Alabama, so they'll be right there on the main stage to start the season. That's a 3:30 kickoff, by the way. So, apply the suntan lotion accordingly down there. Next up, hey, quick timeout. Check and see if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you're not, I humbly ask that you click subscribe. It's free. It doesn't sign you up for anything. What it does is it helps us keep this show free so we can just do college football year-round. All right, back to the clip. This one's interesting, and we had to really debate this. What would you say Sharon Moore is polling at amongst Michigan fans? I had 65% approval rating. It may be higher. Certainly he hasn't had time to totally make it his own program. He's a holdover from the Harbaugh era, which everyone else thinks is a negative. Michigan folks would think that's a positive. And he's got the Ohio State win under his belt, and he just got Bryce Underwood's commitment. And so because of those things, it may be that he's polling higher. It may be that 65% is low. Tough to know how this NCAA thing is going to go. I've got my feelings on it. Many of you disagree on that. And although that shouldn't be tied to Sharon, it will be tied to him. He also could be involved in it from a show cause perspective. I literally have no clue how that's going to go. So a lot of that will be linked, but they got a game in week 2 at Oklahoma. They go to USC this year. We're going to talk about those games a little bit later on. So the Sharon Moore era should be just getting started there. I'd say the win over Ohio State, they beat Bama in the bowl game. I didn't even mention that. 65 to 70%, I think, is what I would put him at there. And the ones that are holdouts, they're not necessarily thumbs down as much as they are, let's just wait and see. I think that would be the attitude. Next up, they've seen at USC, they've seen a fair amount of Lincoln Riley. I got Lincoln Riley at 60% approval amongst USC fans. But I think I'll get pushed back because the ones who don't approve of him really disapprove of him. And they will argue there's no way 6 out of 10 of us approve of him. But here's the key difference. Now, USC didn't have the kind of season that FSU had last year, but they did underachieve. But the difference is they were competitive in every game, and there is huge recruiting momentum, which means there's reason to believe amongst the fan base that the change is either just around the corner or it's already here. They made a change in the GM's office. A year ago, they made a change on the defensive side. It yielded immediate results. You would expect that to improve this year. And so also Lincoln Riley's got a proven track record at the power 4/2 level. In a sense, what I'm saying is you've seen him do it before. So you're not trying to guess whether he can win. Now, what you are trying to do is you're trying to guess, okay, can he win in a style that's complementary enough to not just be flashy enough to make the playoff, but to win a national title? Yeah, that's fair, though, but we're just trying to get the thing righted out there, first and foremost. I think a majority of the fan base believes he can do it. And I think there's a lot of energy. It's sort of a subcurrent of energy. The rest of the country is not picking up on it right now. But if you're close to USC football, you know there's a huge subcurrent of energy that he's benefiting from. It's because of him in many cases, and he's benefiting from it in his approval rating. So I got him at 60%. I would go down to Miami. I moved around on this one some. I went higher than this at first, but I got Mario Cristobal at an 80% approval rating amongst Miami fans. I would be thumbs up on him because the talent's gone up. If I'm a Miami fan, that's indisputable. The results have gone up 3 consecutive years. That's indisputable. The buzz around the program, all that stuff's gone up. It's indisputable. That's why I would approve. However, I do think there is a small collection that may disapprove because they feel the Cam Ward season was wasted last year in a sense that they should have achieved more. For all the ability to explain that away as we failed on defense, well, the person who disapproves of him would say, yeah, but you hired Lance Guidry, so that's on you, which is fair. I don't have a problem with that, but I do look at it in sort of a zero sum with Mario, without Mario. And I know what it was like before he got there. So with him here, I don't know how you can't approve of what he's done so far. You can approve of what he's done and also say, but I want to see more. That's okay. That would be my stance if I were a Miami fan. I love the trajectory we're on. I approve of that, but I think we're capable of more. And I want this cat you brought in at defensive coordinator from Minnesota. I want him to return to us playing a style that I recognize on the defensive side. And, if that's the case, and Carson Beck's healthy and you're telling me he is, then we should be good to go this year. That'd be a fair stance. Mario came from Oregon a few years ago. Dan Lanning is now at Oregon. Dan Lanning's at 85%. It's tough to find an Oregon fan who disapproves of Dan Lanning, but as we all know, if you look long enough, you will find disapproval of almost any coach. And so I would say the 85% who approve of him approve for obvious reasons. If I'm right and there is a small, 5% subset out there that disapprove, they would point out the consecutive losses to Washington 2 years ago. They would completely forget that he went undefeated and won the Big Ten in the regular season. They would remember the lasting image of Dan Lanning, and that is them getting blown out in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State. And for 5% of people, the last thing they saw is the only thing they remember. That's why Dan would probably be at 85 instead of 90, which is the max. But Lanning and Franklin are both the Big Ten coaches that we talked about there that are at 85. We didn't do Ryan Day, but I think Day would be at 85. So there are some really, really high approval rating coaches at major Big Ten institutions right now. And it's just funny as you try and speculate into the future, you don't see any of them falling off, but yet history says At least one of them will. And you don't just cruise there forever. And if I'm to believe what the portal and NIL are doing to the tops of the tallest trees in the sport, you don't just stay there forever. I just don't know where it's going to happen. So there are your approval ratings.